A stunning AP investigation finds the Chinese government is taking draconian measures to slash birth rates among Uighurs and other minorities to curb its Muslim population. China regularly subjects minority women to pregnancy checks, forces intrauterine devices, sterilization, and even abortion on hundreds of thousands, based on an AP report released last week. These population control measures are backed by mass detention, both as a threat and as a punishment.
Ayallık nimemizin tügep kitlegandek aşta yesiyatta alaqiyada. Am boldu biz tügeştu.
That is Zumrat Dawood, a former detainee who was forcibly sterilized, telling the AP, quote, "We lost a part of our body. We lost our identity as women. We will never be able to have children again. They've cut one of our organs. It's gone." Birth rates in the mostly Uighur regions of Khotan and Kashgar plunged by more than 60% from 2015 to 2018. Joining us now via Skype to discuss this news is Reggie Littlejohn. She is the founder and president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, an international coalition to expose and oppose forced abortion, gendercide, and sexual slavery in China. Reggie, welcome back. How is this able to happen in China?
You know, Catherine, things like this should not be able to happen in China or anywhere else in the world. And I believe that they were able to happen in China because China has convinced the world that it is their friend, and then they use that as a cover to be able to pull off some of the most egregious human rights atrocities in the world today. And I believe that one of the reasons that this has come to light recently is that their deplorable behavior during the COVID-19 crisis, delaying telling the world that this is a life-threatening disease, denying that the human-to-human transmission, and all the rest of the things that they did, has shown the world that they are not our friend, and that they are not a good player. And so all of a sudden now people are focusing attention on China, and these things are coming to light. But they've been going on for years. This is not new. This is something that's been happening for years inside of China, and I'm so happy that it is finally coming to light.
And Reggie, China has led people to believe they've relaxed on population control. They went from a one-child policy to a so-called two-child policy, but that's not the reality, is it?
Well, that's right, Catherine. See, the way that they announced the shift from a one-child policy to a two-child policy is they said China abandons the one-child policy, and that made it look like they were abandoning all coercive population control. It could not be farther from the truth. And just this May, they had their annual parliamentary session where they can vote on things. Of course, all these votes are unanimous, because anybody who disagrees with what the party wants, I mean, people don't dare, right, generally. But one of the things that they could have done is they could have voted the two-child policy out of existence. And there were people who are Chinese demographers that were criticizing the two-child policy, that women, even Han Chinese today, if they want to have a third child, they are charged between 2 and 6 times the combined income of themselves and their husbands as a social compensation fee. And if they can't pay it, they either lose their jobs or are forced to have an abortion. And so that's continuing even among the Han Chinese. And now we see also with the Uighurs intense coercive population control under the two-child policy.
And what do we need to know about these detention camps with minority women?
This is an outrage. So what they're doing in the Xinjiang province, also known as East Turkestan, is that they really, what it amounts to, are committing genocide. What they want to do is it seems that they want to just wipe out the Uighur population. And so even though in the past, minority women, especially in the countryside, have been allowed to have 3 children, they're going back now and saying, now we have a two-child policy, now we're going to enforce it. You have a third child. And so then they force them either to pay these fines that they can't pay, or if they can't pay the fines, they're actually literally separating parents from their children. They're putting their children into orphanages or into boarding schools. I read a statistic of 500,000 Uyghur children separated from their parents because their parents had too many children, and they are targeting especially people who have the belief that children are a gift from God. That's called religious extremism. And if you hold that belief, they will throw you into an internment camp.
Reggie, as an expert on this, is there any action you'd like to see the administration take in response?
Well, when the administration heard about these atrocities, which include women being forcibly aborted, forcibly sterilized, raped, and something that we haven't even talked about because it's not an internment camp thing, is they will take the husband and intern him and then move a Chinese cadre, a Chinese man, into the home with the wife and the children. I mean, the oppression is so, it's outrageous. So the Trump administration has really taken an admirably hard line on this, and they signed into law the Uighur Human Rights Act. And I applaud them for that. And then on the day that this report broke last week that you're referring to, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo issued a very strong condemnation of these and called on the people and the governments of the world to rise up and cry out on behalf of the Uighur people.
Reggie, as you mentioned, this sterilization and abortion effort is specifically targeting minority women in China. What should our viewers know about the Uighur community in China? What can you tell us?
Well, the Uighur community is an ancient community, and actually they are related more to Turkey. It's also called East Turkestan. So genetically, they're not Chinese. They're Muslim. They're not Confucian or Buddhist. And so the Chinese government took them over shortly after they took over China, and just annexed their land, which I understand is very mineral rich. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made that they are basically an occupied country.
Is there anything viewers can do as they're hearing about this right now and they want to take some action? What do you recommend?
Well, what I would love people to do is to go on my website and sign our petition against forced abortion in China. So my website is womensrightswithoutfrontiers.org. That's womensrightswithoutfrontiers.org. And then you can click the button that's towards the top, sign our petition, and we have already over 40,000 signatures. I would like to get 50,000 signatures and then deliver those 50,000 signatures to the Chinese embassy in D.C., and that's how people can make their voice heard on this issue.
Excellent. And Reggie, for those who are just learning of your organization, Women's Rights Without Frontiers, can you tell them a bit more of your mission and really the heart of your work?
Well, I'm an attorney, and when I was practicing law in San Francisco, I represented a Chinese refugee who was forcibly sterilized. And I mean, she was dragged out of her home, strapped down to a table, and had her fallopian tubes tied, all without anesthesia. This was in the mid-90s, and this is when I realized that I had heard that China had a one-child policy. I had no idea that it was enforced through forced abortion, forced sterilization, and even infanticide. And I left the law and founded this organization. So we are an advocacy organization. We raise awareness of these atrocities. But at the same time, we also are the only organization in the world that has a network inside of China that is actually saving baby girls from sex-selective abortion and abandoned widows in the Chinese countryside.
Wow. And do you find that your work really becomes a bipartisan issue?
Well, this is the thing that, like, for example, the Uighur Human Rights Act, the two people who were really advocating for it were Nancy Pelosi, Congressman Chris Smith, so we've got a Democrat and Republican, and Marco Rubio, Senator Republican. So yes, I think that this is something that people can agree on. I think that it does, and in terms of forced abortion, no one supports forced abortion because it's not a choice. So I think this is something that can draw people together in our time of so much division.
Absolutely, and this really is a horrendous report that I hope is opening some eyes as to what's happening, and I am so grateful for your work and that you bring this to the light and you work to bring the evil to an end. Reggie Littlejohn, founder and president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.